Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Pink Turns Purple. This is my telesummit in support of National Domestic Violence Month, and I am Hershey Me, your girl, Miss Jennifer Pink. I am so excited that you decided to join me and these amazing thrivers as we not only share our story, but really talk about healing and moving from a space of survivor to thriver. We thrive because of and in spite of. And so I just really am excited about all these amazing women and that one man who decided to join me and share with you guys on this summit. Just before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. I want to remind you that if any part of this video, this testimony speaks to you and you want to share it, you can always hit forward on your email. And of course, invite all of your friends, family, loved ones to register for free at bit.ly/Pink Turns Purple, just like the colors, Pink Turns Purple, so that they can get all the videos directly in their inbox no matter when they register. They will get the whole series, and that is the only way to get the series. So make sure to encourage them to register. And of course, we are trying to make an impact within the African American community because we are the fastest growing community to be affected by domestic violence, but we are the least likely to receive services, and we are trying to make a change within our own community. So if you want to buy a t-shirt, buy a book, a t-shirt book combo, or just make a donation, we greatly appreciate you, as both of the organizations that I'm partnering with are aiming to create domestic violence housing, because shelters aren't that much fun. Like, I'm just being honest. And when you're able to go into an apartment style housing and get full wraparound services, it's an amazing experience and can really help you on the healing process. But that's enough housekeeping, right? Let me introduce you guys to today's thriver. That is Miss LaDios. Everybody say hi.
Hello.
How are you? I'm great. I know they're great. Before she begins and talks to us about her story, let me just give you a little bit of background. LaDios Muhammad is a woman who has had several challenges throughout her lifetime and has come to recognize that with faith and trust in a higher power, trust in a higher power can always guide you through the darkest hour. She has experienced several setbacks and disappointments when it came to love, life, career, and even health-wise. Being someone who was a former victim of partner abuse, not once, but 2 times, the first almost causing her children not only to be fatherless, but motherless as well, the latter producing the lowest point of her life emotionally. Each of these experiences was the catalyst to learning the true power of self-love, changing the perspective of her lens and her voice, ultimately going from victim to transitioned and getting off the sidelines to play and live this game we call life with valor. That is how living with valor transpired. LaDios shares her voice to continue to heal herself and inspire others to heal as well through coaching, training, and providing a strong support system. Sometimes we just do not know where or how to begin to redevelop this internal support and have uncommon valor, and this is where I come in. That's what she's quoted as saying. LaDios resides in Denver, Colorado with her 2 young adult children and partner whom she describes as a breath of fresh air that gently guides her back on track when she is off. In her spare time, she spends time in her community socializing at local tea shops, chills in the parks, performs in theaters and films, and plays with Tika Amala, her great lion Lop, also Peter, Preston, Philip, and Shiera, her fishes. Aww. So without any further ado, I want you in your own words, I mean, we got a little bit of taste of it in your bio, but tell us your story of domestic violence.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity. I appreciate it, Miss Jennifer. So basically in a nutshell, the domestic violence was with my first husband, which is the father of my children. We had been married for 8 years, and there wasn't necessarily physical abuse throughout the whole marriage. It was just, we didn't really get along. Like, we didn't really mesh well. I mean, there was love there. It just, I was young, and I just knew that I did not want to be married to this person anymore. And so I wanted to, work on myself. Anyhow, I filed for a divorce in 2003. We were officially divorced. In fact, it went just like this. I mean, and well, let me just back up. We did fight a lot during the marriage, and there was emotional abuse, but there was never like really physical abuse. Maybe every now and then, but not like someone smacking or punching me. But I knew that the relationship was unhealthy and it was a bad choice. And so I filed for a divorce. It was a year before we were officially divorced, and we had to work out things, and it, which started out civil. We ended up going literally to the courthouse on the day of our divorce in January of 2003, and we literally left, seen a movie, and had dinner and had a conversation about our future. We talked about possibly getting back together at a later date, but we both knew that we were pretty much two pretty unhealthy souls, and we needed to work on ourselves. And I knew that I just did not want to be married. So in 2003, we were, after that, 2 months later in March, there was that big blizzard in Denver, and it shut the whole, the entire city down. And he had moved out at that time, and at that time I thought we were still friends. And so I asked, could he come by to watch the kids? Because 4 days later, I was able to shovel the snow out to go to work. We had been locked down for about 4 or 5 days in the city of Denver. And first he said yes, then he said no, then he finally said yes. Anyway, I went to work that day, and apparently at that time, after the divorce, I had been seeing somebody. It wasn't anything serious, but it was after the divorce. And long story short, the guy called, and when he called my cell phone, it rolled over to my house phone. My son answered the phone, and my ex overheard the conversation, and he freaked out. By the time I got home, he was livid, upset, and he was pacing when I came in. And I walked into the door, and the lights were kind of off, and as I came in, I didn't realize that my children hadn't ran to me. I knew I'd spoken to my son about 30 minutes before that, and he says, "Mom, Dad's really mad." And I was like, "Oh, don't worry about it, baby." My son was 9. He's like, "No, you don't understand. He's really mad." I was like, "Don't worry, that I will handle it." And so as I got into the house, I realized there was a vase smashed, glass smashed everywhere. The phone, like I couldn't find the phone that was on the wall, that back in the day when there was phones, house phones. Anyhow, so I looked, and he had smashed up things in the living room, and I was like, oh my God. And then I panicked, so because my children still hadn't come downstairs to greet me. And I ran upstairs, and I went in the room, and the bedroom mattress was slashed. All of my clothes, whatever he took, was ripped to shreds. And there was a big hole in the wall that he punched in the wall. And I was like, and then he had destroyed my TV and VCR and DVDs. Everything was destroyed. I was like, why did you do this? And he goes, why did you do this to me? Now, granted, we are divorced. We are no longer married. And I said, you know what? I can't take this. You are going to jail tonight. And his exact words were, I'm going to make it worth something. And so I still hadn't checked on my children at that time, but I ran into downstairs to look for the phone, and I realized he had pulled the phone out of the wall. I couldn't find it, and I couldn't find my cell phone, and he had cornered me into the kitchen, and I was in a corner, and I don't know when this happened, but he had somehow gotten this little paring knife, the knives that are this big, and caught me cornered. I tried to talk my way out of it, and he was like, you don't love me, and you ruined our family. And my hair was like super long back that time, and he literally wrapped his hand around my hair, pulled my neck back, and slit my throat. And then and I was like, oh my God, like, you really did this. I was in shock, but I was innately calm. And then he goes, oh, and then he snapped, and he's like, oh my God, baby, I'm killing you. And he starts pacing back and forth, and I'm holding my neck, and I'm like, you got to get me to the hospital or I'm going to die. But before he did that, before he slit my throat, I had called my children down because I wanted to get them out the house. And so when I was talking to my children, because he had me cornered, they came downstairs, and my daughter was like, well, I want to stay here with you, Mom. And I said, I know, I need you to go over to the neighbor's house. and Miss Brenda and tell her to call the police. And my son, and they ran out across the street to go call the police. And then the act happened. He goes, yeah, you need to go, because I don't want you to see what's about to happen to your mother. Because the reason I had called him down the stairs was because he had mentioned something in between, like he's going to kill himself, and I'm scared he's going to kill the children too. So after he did that, he goes, oh, he starts pacing, and he says stuff like, I'm going to need to, he goes, I'm going to need to kill myself now. I'm going to need to kill myself. And he starts taking the knife and poking it, but he didn't have like enough, I guess, courage to kill himself. And he goes, wait, before I do that, I need to finish the job. So he came back, and he, and I'm still over here. He comes back, he does my hair, and he goes, stabs me some more times. So now I'm bleeding profusely, and I'm really holding my neck, and I'm like, you really have to get me out of here or I'm going to die. And then he's still pacing back and forth, because now he's snapped. He realized what he has done. So I go to our sliding door, and I had a security lock, and I'm still holding my neck, so I can't really open the door. And even if I did, there's like 5 feet of snow in the backyard. I can't get out. So I finally, literally, what I did was, I was like, are you going to let me out? And he kept pacing and pacing, because he was really in shock. So what I ended up doing was just literally going to the kitchen. I got on the floor, and I prayed to God and said, okay, God, I had a wonderful life. The only thing I ask you is to watch over my children. That's all I ask you. I'm not upset, whatever. If you're calling me now, I'm ready to go. And I prayed. And as soon as I said that prayer, I don't know if the heavens opened or what. He walked and said, okay, baby, I'm gonna let you out. And he literally swooped me up, picked me up, and walked me out the door. And then I went to my neighbor was out there shoveling snow. I was like, ayúdame, call the police. And then he was like, yeah, call the police, because I just did a bad thing. I tried to kill my ex-wife. And then I walked over across the street, and, I don't know what I told, my neighbor opened the door, and I said, don't let my children see me this way. And she sent them back upstairs and told them to stay upstairs. And then she brought me into her kitchen. And somehow I could remember 3 telephone numbers. And that was my mom, we left a number. My sister, we left her number. 4 numbers. I called his dad and left the number on his voicemail, and his mom. I remember 4 numbers. And I had her call and leave messages. And I think she got my sister and to tell her to come get the kids, that I was going to the hospital. So at that point, I said, I'm really tired. And by that time, I was like, I got to get some rest. And she's trying to keep me awake. But soon as I was ready to kind of black out, the ambulance came in there, rushed me in there, got me to, Denver Health. And I woke up, it was days later, and, the rest is history. So one of the things, he punctured the vocal box, my trachea, and in my esophagus. And I went from 120 pounds to 93 pounds. So it was hard for me to breathe. I literally spoke like this, and they told me I would never speak again. And so I was like, you don't have the last day. I literally prayed and said, you don't have the last day. And so, I just did a lot of spiritual work and healing, and I had the best support system. And then, I was able to get my voice back over time. So that was a big transition in my life. But I never really, I survived it. I was I was a survivor. And I was like, before I was a victim, then I was a survivor. I'm like, oh yes, and I never covered my scars, and I never tried to hide them. But eventually what happened is 8 years later, I get married again. And I totally believe people should take accountability, because I didn't really know this guy. And I don't know if it was probably some insecurity with me that, I just, I've been waiting, I've dated, and I've had just such bad experience over the last 8 years, and somebody's really, really ready to commit. And we got married in 5 months. Very unhealthy relationship. I mean, he had just got out of prison, didn't really have a job. And those are questions I asked myself, what space was I in that this happened? So anyhow, and this particular guy was a narcissist, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with narcissistic abuse. So that's worse to me than the actual physical abuse that my husband did. But I didn't know about narcissistic abuse, and he was so clever at it. But here is a very person who was on top of her game, very confident and secure on one end. And in 10 months, I don't know how it happened, but in 10 months, he had me feeling so insecure and small about myself. I was second guess any decision I made. He was calling me. I mean, I had been excluded from my parents, my friends, everybody. And he was very strategic at it. And he would come home when he felt like it. I'm like, you are married. And one time I was making tea, and he said, if you don't sit your ass down, I'm going to take this tea and pour it on your face. And I believed him. So I was like, I don't know how I got here. And we had gotten pregnant. Unfortunately, I miscarried at about 4 months because he had cheated on me. And about 2 months into our marriage, no, he didn't cheat on me. He might have, but 2 months into our marriage, his ex had said he needed to go get checked because she had something. He thought she was lying and jealous because he had gotten married. So the whole time I had chlamydia from the second month of our marriage all the way into my pregnancy. The thing was, I had gotten severe strep throat so bad, and like pink eye, and broke out in all these cold sores. And so they gave me a shot for the strep throat. Well, when I went to go get an STD test and like all of the stuff, everything came up negative because they had just given me the shot. So I was like, oh, I'm clean. But then, my body symptoms kept coming and weird things kept happening. I'm like, I'm getting these yeast infections. Like, what's wrong? Anyhow, she's like, well, you're pregnant. And she goes, I want to tell you have chlamydia. And I was like, oh my God. I've never had a guy cheat on me. So it was like shocking. And so anyhow, I was like, I want a divorce. And, he's like, no. And then he told me about the story. And I was like, he pulled her on the phone and she, told the story. Yes, I called him, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, anyway, it resulted that we miscarried on the child because of, the bacteria that was in my body. And so it just got worse and worse. And then it started to become physically abusive. And then he was so controlling because he convinced me to quit leave my contacts and go into our business, which was the limousine business, but he controlled all the money. And I don't know how I got there. I got there. And so eventually, push come to shove, at the end of the day, it was 10 months in it. And I missed my mom. I hadn't seen her in like almost a year, which wasn't normal. And I hadn't really talked to her. And I wanted to spend time with my mom. I felt very alone because he isolated me from all my friends. And the vibrant person, the social, I wasn't that person. And so we were in the movies, and I remember him calling me during the movie, and she's like, you need to talk to him. And my mom never knew what was going on. So I went out, and the conversation was so bad. He literally tore me down to shreds and said so many cruel or horrible things and called me names. And I just started bawling. And I'm like, why are you talking to me like this? I don't deserve this. Like, what did I do? And he's like, you fucking bitch, you stupid ass bitch. And he hung up on me, and I called him, and he hung back up on me. And then I went back into the movie theater. My mom could tell something was wrong. She's like, do you want to go? And I said, yes. And she was like, listen, I need you to tell me everything. I need you to tell me everything. So I told her everything. She goes, that is not love. And she says, if I help you get out of this relationship, you better never go back. And I said, Mom, 1, I'm never going back, but 2, I just need your support. And I changed my telephone number. We went and changed the locks. We moved his stuff. We got boxes. We moved all his stuff outside into the garage, everything. And that was pretty much it. He stalked me for like a year and a half. I filed for a divorce, and I filed for a divorce 4 or 6 months later. And then it was really simple because we had no assets and children. But when that happened, at that time, I was like, I really need to do some soul searching. Like, how did I get here? Like, what's wrong? What am I lacking inside of me? And I remember going to 1 Corinthians 13th chapter. It talks about love. I read that literally 3 times a day, for 90 days. Because one thing is, I didn't want to be this bitter woman thinking that all men are bad or afraid to fall in love again. And I really focused on healing myself internally, spiritually, and emotionally. And then I was able to heal faster, quicker, and overnight, you know, I was back on my grind. I was attracting good things. I was doing healthy things, attracting new circles. And then, you know, eventually I met the love of my life, who I'm with now. And then Living with Valor came. And, you know, Valor just means someone who is, you know, not afraid, uncommon faith, someone who wants to do things on their own faith. And, you know, there's nothing that's going to stop you. And so I created Living with Valor, where I, you know, coach, teach, and train others, you know, to have, you know, get through things. And it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But the thing that helped me was the support system. I had the best support system. And a lot of times with, you know, when victims go through that, they don't have the right support system, or they can't afford, you know, counseling and so forth and so on. So that's how I transitioned from victim to survivor to being someone who's a thriver.
Definitely. Your story is definitely one of the most impactful ones that I've heard from the thrivers doing this, because, you know, a lot of us have not experienced the near death. You know, it was like, no, like I should be dead, but I'm still here. And so to hear that, and then to hear how you are not filled with the anger and the bitterness and the hatred and all those things. But before we go that way, I want to back up a little bit, and I want to talk about how you notice now how you were in a survivor space after dealing with your ex-husband, after, you know, he tried to kill you. It puts you in a survivor space. And I think a lot of times we don't recognize that in the survivor space, we still have insecurities. We think, well, we're out of the situation. I've survived. We're standing strong. You know, like you said, you didn't cover your scars. You're like, I'm here. I'm surviving. But deep down, there's this insecurity that we have. And I think sometimes we're masking the insecurity with standing so strong and proud.
Yes.
You know, and like on the inside, we're really like, why me? Like, and we doubt that we'll ever find love again. And we doubt that, you know, this is not the end of the road for us, so to speak, in a lot of ways. And because we doubt that, we cover it up with this super survivor mentality, so to speak. And so I just want to talk about that a little bit with you. When did you realize, and I'm assuming after the second situation, but when did you realize you didn't want to do that again, that you needed to do something completely different?
So how I recognized it was after I got out of that, and I realized how quickly I went down. Like, this wasn't like something that happened over 5 years. This happened in 10 months. Okay. That right there was like the biggest red flag ever. Then what I did was I started reflecting what type of relationships that I had over the 8 years. The universe has a way of speaking to you. And I always say that it speaks to you in 3 different levels. And I always say, first, they'll do a little warning, and it's like scrape a knee. You're like, oh, I got a little scrape knee. I don't even, a little Band-Aid maybe. Then you might twist your ankle. Then you still not listening, he's going to break your ankle. Okay. So, but he's giving you warning. So the first warning was, after maybe a year or 2 of the first act from my first husband, I was dating this guy, but I was not dating it because I was attracted to him. I liked him because I wanted to get back in that secure space of having a family, and he can provide that for my children and I. But one thing he did was he broke down. He was like, when you love somebody, you love them unconditionally. So therefore, there is no conditions or barriers. You give all of you. He says, I don't see you giving all of you. Everything you're doing is holding back. He said, you never hold back. He said, and until you give 100% of yourself vulnerably and not holding back, you will never get the love that you deserve. Now, so he broke off our courtship. So, And so when I talk about courtship, because like I dated like 3 or 4 guys in between, but we never had intimate relationships. So I was like hurt and devastated. But one thing he did is we sat on the phone talking about the breakup from like a Friday night after I got off work at 5 in the afternoon to literally 8 a.m. Saturday morning, and he gave me proper closure. So that was the first sign that I still was in survival mode and I needed to work on me because I wasn't ready to love. However, I wasn't listening. Then I had another relationship with a guy, and I broke it off because he wasn't ready. But there was a third one, and we were engaged to be married, and all of the signs were there. And as I confronted him, he gave me the words that I wanted to hear. And I kept saying, I'm not like some hard up, bitch who wants to get married. You either do or you don't. We can just not, and we had invited like 200 people to the wedding. And he literally called the wedding off like 30 days. We had already bought like the honeymoon. And so that was the most devastating thing that ever happened to me. So after I get married the second time, which was totally not a good reason, because I was so frustrated from all these failed relationships, that's when I had to sit back and reflect and say, you don't love yourself, and you don't love yourself because look at what's all these relationships you've had. They've been signs by the universe and you have not acknowledged them. You're so ready to get in a relationship because you feel like you're getting older or because you want a family, and you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And then I realized I didn't love myself. And I even went back further when I realized the first abuse I've ever had, that I like somehow put it back way back and compartmentalize it in my subconscious. And it was like in high school, like, you know what I mean? And so I just started doing the soul searching and working on me. But those different relationships and, reflecting back, like, hey, I couldn't even manifest, like, get the job that I wanted. I was working at jobs where I was getting like $11 an hour. And I had a substantial degree in history, and I couldn't. And then, so as I started to work on myself, I'm starting to transition out of this survival mode, because now I'm attracting new people. I'm attracting the money that I want. I'm attracting more healthy things. I'm feeling stronger. I'm getting back into me, and I'm redeveloping and rebuilding a good foundation, because my foundation was completely broken, and I never second guessed myself. I was tapped into my intuition. I was able to make firm decisions, correct and solidified decisions. If things happen and challenges happen, I was able to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it, instead of breaking down. I'm like, oh my God, woe is me. Like, how can I survive this, but I can't survive this, So a lot of it was reflecting on what type of relationships I had. And you had to do, some people don't like looking at that person in the mirror. You have to do a real serious self-analysis about yourself and be honest, like, you're and what do you need to do? Well, I took 2 years and just was solo working on LaDios. And when you work on yourself, all these things come up, and you just like, okay, I get it now. But that's how I realized I was in survival mode and I wanted to go into thriver mode.
Exactly. And the reason why I wanted to bring that back up is because I think that so many of us do that. Like, it's a natural reflex, and like you said, the universe gives you signs like, boo, pay attention. There's something we got to work on right here. Wait a minute. There's something you got to fix right here. There's something I need you to do right here. And we just seem to kind of brush them off. We ignore them. We're like, oh no, sorry. Had a little internet issue there, but I am back. But I think that we have to pay attention to the signs that come across our paths, and we have to pay. Yes, we're back. We have to pay attention to what's happening and what the universe is trying to tell us ultimately in these. Okay, so what I was saying was is that I think we kind of like you said, we ignore the universe and the signs the universe sends us, and we just kind of keep going and keep moving, and we stay in a place of survival. But like you said, when you realize, when you finally look in the mirror at yourself, and it's not focused on what they've done to you, what they did to you, how they talk to you, what kind of people they are, but it's focused solely on you, you're able to really change the narrative and change the conversation, and then get the healing that is so important. So I want to ask you, I know you said that you focused on 1 Corinthians 13 and really defining love.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you did to really heal and step into the space of being a thriver?
So I definitely started to do, workshops to develop myself. I read lots of books, self-healing books. And I think the strongest thing was surrounding myself with good support systems, getting involved with women's groups and things that, that people can share their stories so that you can utilize those different tools. Did a lot of research, you know, on the internet of like getting testimonies, looking at people, how they survived. But mainly the work was with me. And I think, when I say books, I'm a firm believer, like a book will call you because it'll be the right book that's going to heal you. I can't pinpoint any specific book, but I like to read. So whatever that was available, the resources. And then like, if sometimes they'll have workshops of like, self-love workshops. I remember at that time, and this may not mean anything, but I didn't know who Joel Osteen was. And I didn't know, I can't think of her other name, but I started watching him, and there was things that he would say in his particular lecture that really resonated with me. And so I started just looking at myself and saying, how do I want to clear up all this residue, and then just start picking away at one thing at a time. Okay. Then also I had to cut off old friends that no longer served the situation where I'm going. So it's like, if you want to be a millionaire, you can't hang around people who's talking about they're always broke. I change, like you mentioned something that I think is very important, is change the narrative. You have to start to also reprogram your mind and how you think. You know what I'm saying? You have to, and that right there is the most challenging thing is, okay, I can't do the blame game. Let me go in back and say, how did I play accountability for this, and taking accountability and then forgiving myself. I know people like, oh yeah, they always say forgive, but you have to forgive yourself, because first you're saying, why was I so stupid? Why did I do this? But every relationship, everything that happens is for a reason, for you to get closer and closer to that spiritual elevation of who you are. Do you know what I'm saying? So but that's what I did. I did a lot of self-help. If it was a workshop, I did it. If it was a book, I read it. If it was something on TV, and I did not engage in anything that was harmful to my behavior. So like, I wasn't out in the club partying. Do you know what I'm saying? I took long walks. I connected with Mother Nature. I went to things that would like edify me and, so, help me be a better person. But any old behaviors, I started to chip away that. And again, I started rewriting my own narrative and saying, this is the person I want to become. And, did a visualization, whether it was like a vision board, you know what I mean? So, and then, just things like that. And I started defining who did I want to be as a person, and how did I want to be of a service to other people, instead of trying to see what someone can give to me. Because I wanted to be like, I want to give back, but I don't want to be that person, be like, oh, I survived domestic violence. That meant nothing for me, because I feel like we're survivors every day. When you walk outside, you can get hit by a car and you survive not getting hit by a car. But I wanted to do something that was impactful. So I started thinking with the universe, like, how can I serve others every day? Like, and then it starts to align you even with jobs. Like, if you have a full-time job, you start to attract little things by little things. And then, but those are the things. I just did the work, and the work is really the self work. reading books, looking at inspiration, motivational videos online, you know, taking out the garbage. Like we didn't have cable. We didn't watch TV. You know what I'm saying? People, I don't even know if people have a library card anymore. I do. But I'm just saying, like, doing the things that are simple, that didn't cost a lot of money. There's this thing, I don't know if you all have it out in Atlanta, but we have this page called meetup.com. You guys have that? Okay, great. You can go on meetup.com and find someone who has the same thing as yourself. Like, get a support group. And it's not, most times they're free, but if there is a charge, it might be $5. The thing is, I was able, because I had ties to groups, you know, that were free, that we had, you know, sometimes they had a Black support group where they had psychologists to put an inner circle so that you can, you know, have a safe space to talk about things. But the resources are out there. The thing is we have to look for them and go out and find, you know, like, just because you're a psychologist and you're Black doesn't mean that you're compatible to what I need. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to find that person that's going to take you to the next level, because being someone who's a psychologist and have all the credentials, but you don't have the experience. I'm not saying you have to experience abuse, but maybe I'm on a spiritual level. So your approach should be coming at me spiritually. And I'm not talking about Bible and Quran. I'm just talking about there's a bigger something spiritual you need to connect. So I did the work. You know, it wasn't just reading 1 Corinthians. That was the prelude to everything, because I did not want to be bitter. And then when I said, I'm happy, even there was a last conversation with my second ex, and he says, I got some stuff to get off my chest. And I said, okay, let me give it to you. Let me give it to you. And I was like, so you can have proper closure. And I approached it, even though the stuff that he did was so dirty and foul to me, I was not angry. And once you get to that part where you know you're not angry and, you know, hateful, and he was just saying all this stuff, and I just listened. And he goes, I don't understand. I gave you the world, LaDios. And I said, let me tell you something. You gave me a lot of things. But one thing I can say is I love you, but I love me more. And I got to that place where I love myself more. And that's where it's empowering. You just have to work on that self-love. I just feel like, and the only way to do it is you have to surround yourself with a good, strong support system. And it's not like, oh, okay, I've been doing this for 6 months. You have to do the work. If you're not doing the work, it's not going to help. And like I said, the work was 2 years. So, and I said, when I say overnight, 2 years is overnight for me to get to, from when I was a -10 to 100. That's 2 years. But it was a focused 2 years of doing the work. And I attracted all kinds of men, but I could see that they weren't about crap, because I was able to say, red flag, peace. Nope, peace. But I could see that the quality of men that I was attracting was evolving. And it wasn't like I was looking to attract them. But then when the one came, I wasn't even looking. And it was like, wow. You know, you start to measure the people that come into your life. You know, they say that water seeks its own level. You start to attract who you are. And I could see myself with work. So.
Exactly. She's giving you guys the complete blueprint. I mean, you know that I can testify that it's always the self-work. And if that offends you in any type of way, it's probably because you're not doing the self-work. You know, a lot of times people will say, oh, you know, we see personal accountability sometimes as victim blaming in any kind of situation, but especially in domestic violence. And that's not the case. There's two totally different things. One is me telling you it's your fault and you shouldn't have yelled at him and that's why he hit you. That's victim blaming. And that's just not okay. Like, no, I don't care what you did. It should have never gotten to this point. Personal accountability is saying, why am I attracting this? Why am I the victim in these types of situations? Why am I repeating the cycle? Why don't I love myself enough to love me more than I love them? You know, and that's the personal accountability piece. And that's the piece that she's talking about when she says you've got to do the work. You've got to do the self-work. You've got to work on you. And, you know, that goes for everybody. No matter if you've been a victim of domestic violence, no matter if you think you've had a great life, like, always room for self-work. There's always room to go to the next level within yourself. And like she said, when you start doing the self-work, when you start doing the healing, when you start growing in who you are, you start attracting some different things. You know, whether it's your business, whether it's a job, whether it's the man that you've been wishing you could have that you thought you could never have, whether it's just peace in your home with your kids or whatever, the more you elevate in who you are. And I think a lot of times we focus on everything else. Okay, so if I go to school, then I'll get this good job, and then I'll make this money, and then my life will be better. If you on the inside messed up, ain't none of that gonna matter. You know, if I just marry this man and then everything will be better. If you on the inside are messed up, that isn't going to change anything. You know, they say misery comes at all economic levels, misery comes at all backgrounds, and it's true, which is why domestic violence, you can see it across the board everywhere, because it's about a self thing. It's not about them, it's about you. So you've got to focus on you, and you've got to do the work that you need to do to really grow and to really heal. And so, I mean, she laid the blueprint out there for you. I just, backed it up a little bit. But I just really want to encourage you guys to really get that and really take that to heart. Like she said, find an accountability group. For those of you who have already seen it and you know what's coming because you know who I am, join the healing circle, because that's what we're going to be about, that self-work. What do I have to do to get to that next level, no matter what it looks like? And another big thing I always hear is we seem to think that if we, get a life coach, if we get a therapist, there's something wrong with us. Baby, there is something wrong with all of us.
Yes.
I don't care who you are, what you look like, how much money you make, what you do. There is something wrong with all of us. And the moment we accept that and we go, so who cares? I'm a life coach. I have a life coach. I'm in training to be a minister. I still have a spiritual mentor. Same thing I'm sure for LaDios. Like, you've got to have that. You've got to have other people pouring into you to help you get to where you're trying to go. Because if you could do it by yourself, you would have did it by yourself a long time ago. And you haven't, because you can't. So get the help that you need. But with all that being said, I want to give you one more opportunity to share whatever is on your heart, whatever is pulling at your heart, for the women and the men that are watching that are in that survivor space. And they're recognizing it. And they're, clearly they're recognizing it because they're joining us and they're watching. Whatever it is that you feel they need to know to get them to move to that survivor space, I want to give you the platform to say that.
So, Jennifer, and I'm going to keep this super brief, but I'm going to tell you to get out of that survivor space, you have to make a conscious decision that you want to transition and thrive. That's it. Once you have made a decision, everything will unfold and come to the place. But if you are in a state of confusion, and you know how they said God is not the author of confusion, when it's confusing, it's not right. But once you make a decision, everything opens up for you, and you will attract the right people, the right time, the right groups, and everything accordingly. But you have to decide that you want to do the work. That's it.
Well, there she said it. Make the decision. I mean, it really is. It's very simple, but it is also extremely difficult to do.
Yes.
So make the decision and make it for yourself, not for us, not for your family, not for, the man of your dreams that you're hoping will come, but make the decision for you. I'm gonna just leave it right there, because that's the key. That's the piece right there. So thank you again, LaDios, for joining me, for sharing your story, for encouraging all of the men and women watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you watching, remember, feel free to hit that forward button and share this email with whoever you feel needs it. Encourage everyone to register. Post about it on social media. #PinkTurnsPurple. That's PINK turns purple, and just share it with the world. And let's get the message out there, because we really got to do the work on ourselves, for ourselves, right now. Not tomorrow, but right now. So until next time, it's her, she, me, your girl, Miss Jennifer Pink again, wishing you love, peace, and baby powder freshness. Bye-bye.